Hello and welcome to Better Hormones for Better Health. My name is Jill Cruz and I help women over 40 who are fed up with yo-yo dieting to lose weight and feel great, but in a sustainable and enjoyable way. My background is in functional medicine. I have a Master of Science degree in human nutrition and I am a board certified nutritionist. So I bring science-backed strategies to the table. But I also bring compassion because I myself struggled with a nighttime eating habit for 15 years. So I know how hard it can be. I wanted to talk about hormones today because hormones are so important in the weight loss journey. Hormones affect every aspect of your health. Almost all tissue in the body, or maybe all tissue in the body, has receptors for hormones, meaning they allow hormones to dictate behavior. So whether it's your brain, your liver, your kidneys, your fat tissue, your muscle, all of those areas are susceptible to hormones, and hormones need to be in balance. They are extremely powerful, yet the balance is so important. If your hormones are in balance, you're going to feel great. If they're not, you're really, really, really going to feel it, and you can feel it in many areas of your body. It's not that hard to balance hormones when they are slightly out of whack. But if you wait too long, they can cause a lot of problems. And these are just a few, not all. I'm sure there are many more. Weight gain is a big one, right, for many hormones. Fatigue, depression, belly fat, puffy face, indigestion, inflammation, acne, brain fog. Did I say that already? Brain fog, acne, diarrhea, and even lead to certain diseases like type 2 diabetes and heart disease. So really, really damaging if you're not careful. Now, there are many, many hormones in the body, but I'm going to talk about 4 biggies. And all 4 of them relate to weight loss. So that was also part of the reason why I wanted to speak to them about them. So we're going to talk about thyroid, cortisol, insulin, and estrogen. The first is thyroid. Now, there are many different thyroid hormones, of course. It's very complicated, but you really only have to worry about these 3, TSH, T4, and T3. And you don't even have to know the technical names. When you do lab work, you'll see these things written. TSH is a hormone that's actually produced in your brain that sends a signal to the thyroid to say, okay, we need more hormones or we need less. So very important and always tested on labs. T4 is produced by the thyroid gland, and then for the most part, that T4 goes around the body and it gets converted to T3 elsewhere, not in the thyroid itself, but elsewhere in the body. So all of these things need to be working correctly, right? The brain has to have the right signal. The thyroid has to receive that signal, make the right amount of the hormone, T4, and then that hormone needs to get converted in other cells. So there are a lot of factors involved in thyroid health. When we think of thyroid, we think of energy and metabolism. And T3 is absolutely essential for good energy and metabolism balance. So if you have too much T3, you'll end up with something called hyperthyroidism. If you have too little, then it's hypothyroidism. Please, please, please keep in mind that one person can be experiencing swinging back and forth between hyper and hypo. And that's when it's really confusing. But it's not always the case. Most of the time, most women in America, they have hypothyroidism. And that's where they have a really hard time losing weight. But they also may feel fatigue, depression, brain fog, constipation, being cold all the time. You don't have to have all of these symptoms. You could have just 1 or 2, and it's very significant. The other side of the coin is hyperthyroidism, where it's sort of the opposite. Usually those people will lose weight quickly. They'll feel anxiety. They'll have diarrhea instead of constipation. They'll be intolerant to heat rather than being cold all the time. So you can see how your metabolism is either the furnace is turned on really hot, too hot, and your metabolism is running like crazy, or the furnace is too low and everything is sluggish. So that's basically an overview. There's so much more, but we have other things to talk about. The last thing I want to say about thyroid is that it's often missed by doctors because they oftentimes will only test TSH. And as I explained to you, how important it is to also know not only T4, but T3 as well. And so we really, really, really need to go by symptoms first, and a lot of doctors don't do that. So if you suspect that you have hypothyroidism, which is the one that's often missed, find a doctor that's going to listen to you, that's going to respect you and listen to you and listen to the symptoms. Okay, the next one we're going to talk about is cortisol. Cortisol is known as the stress hormone. It's absolutely essential for a coordinated stress response. Cortisol is kind of like the workhorse. It's going to go around and do what needs to be done in the stress response. Cortisol gets a bad reputation because we all know stress is bad, right? We think stress is bad. But cortisol is crucial for health. Almost all the cells in our bodies are receptive to cortisol. That means it's really, really, really important. It helps control our blood sugar, inflammation, and metabolism. And it also helps with tissue repair and memory. But chronic stress causes problems. So one of the most common problems that comes about from chronic stress is high blood sugar. Eventually could even lead to diabetes, type 2 diabetes. And the blood pressure can go up as well. It can cause anxiety, depression, digestive problems, headaches, heart disease, sleep problems, weight gain. Many, many issues like this that we do associate with stress are caused by too much cortisol. But interestingly, and a little bit scarily, cortisol can even shrink our brain. And when I say our brain, I mean the prefrontal cortex, which is the reasonable, rational, logical, intellectual part of our brain. So it's definitely not the part that we want to shrink. So we definitely want to avoid chronic stress or deal with it. Also keep in mind that cortisol can steal from other hormones. So we make cortisol, but we also make estrogen and progesterone and testosterone in our adrenal glands. And if your body is like, no, I don't care about your reproductive health right now, I don't care about your sex drive, we just need cortisol because we're in a constant state of stress, then those other hormones are going to be compromised. And unfortunately, cortisol or chronic stress is often ignored by us, right? We blow it off. Oh, it's just stress. It's just stress. It's just stress. Well, no, it's not just stress. Stress kills people. So it has to be dealt with for proper hormonal balance. The next hormone we're going to talk about is insulin. Insulin balances our blood sugar. It is the most important hormone for controlling blood sugar. And it is crucial for weight regulation. The thing is that insulin turns off fat burning. It turns it off. Okay, so every time you eat, insulin rises. And when your insulin is rising and when it's high, you will not be burning much fat off of your body. Maybe none at all. So keep that in mind. If you eat a lot throughout the day, you're going to be raising your insulin over and over and over again. Too much insulin causes problems. There's something called insulin resistance, and that's where your cells become resistant to insulin. They say, no more, you are always around, we don't want you anymore. And when that happens, the insulin can't tell the cell that it needs to accept more sugar. And so not only does your insulin rise, but your blood sugar rises as well, and it can't get into the cells. When this happens, it can be very, very hard to lose weight. You may feel like no matter what you do, you can't lose weight. And as a matter of fact, if you identify as someone like this, chances are high that you do have insulin resistance, even if your doctor doesn't tell you. And I'll talk about that in a minute. I just wanted to mention that insulin resistance is associated with increased risk for obesity, cardiovascular disease, cancer, type 2 diabetes, of course, right? But also Alzheimer's, and even, now we're learning more about COVID, serious complications from COVID-19. So this is a doozy. We really, really have to be on top of this. But unfortunately, a lot of times people will go to the doctor and they will have insulin resistance for years before they get the diagnosis of pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes. So it's something definitely that needs to be paid attention to. And the last one we're going to talk about is estrogen. Estrogen is the female sex hormone. Men make it too, but for women, it really is super important, and it's sort of known as the feminine hormone. This hormone, estrogen, is important in our reproductive health, bone health, cardiovascular health, brain health, skin health, digestive functions. I mean, estrogen is everywhere. And it affects a lot more than maybe you would think. You would just associate it with your sex drive or your ability to have babies or your period or whatever, but it's actually much more comprehensive than that. Too much or too little estrogen can cause issues. And any woman who's, been through a significant part of life, even if you're not through menopause, if you went through puberty, you have your period, you've been pregnant, have had postpartum, all throughout all of these phases in our lives, estrogen has been there, for better or for worse. It's been there. So it's definitely involved in that roller coaster emotional, hormonal up and downs that we feel. Estrogen protects us. It's super important, right? That's why we want to get the right balance. Low estrogen can cause osteoporosis, heart disease, certain types of cancer, and dementia. And I'm not taking any of these lightly. Most of this we have to worry about more postmenopausal, as we are producing a lot less estrogen in the body, and then our risk for all of these diseases goes up. And this is all research-based. This isn't Jill Cruz, pontificating on something. So the risks are real, so we really have to pay attention to estrogen. Unfortunately, again, many doctors brush off the symptoms, but I'm here to tell you that you do not have to suffer. There are a lot of solutions out there. You just need to find, especially postmenopausal, a good doctor who is willing to work with you and give you that right hormonal treatment. Before you go through menopause, a lot of it can be done with, lifestyle and diet, exercise, which we're going to talk about, but also with botanicals. So how do you fix these hormones? Well, there are 4 main areas of life, of health, that are really, really important, and each of them has an effect on your hormone tremendously. So there's sleep, physical activity, stress management, and food. So we'll talk about sleep first. Sleep is the most important factor in your health. Nothing even comes close. So if you are suffering from sleep issues, it should be priority number 1. Priority number 1, and I'm a nutritionist and I'm saying that. As you may have noticed, food actually came last. So how do you get better sleep? Well, consistency is important, and this has been researched pretty heavily. A lot of people suffer from sleep issues, especially in the United States. And these 3 are very well researched and have shown to be effective. So consistency, the temperature of your room, and light therapy. Consistency means going to bed and waking up at the same time every day. So if you do this, you're going to see an improvement in your sleep, most likely. So just go to bed and get up at the same time every day. I go to bed at 9:30, between 9:30 and 10, so I give myself a 30-minute window. And I wake up at between 6 and 6:30 every day. And I don't need an alarm. I set my alarm, but I don't need it because I wake up every day. And your body loves this. And this is relating back to the hormones. Our hormones are all cyclical. We have this circadian rhythm, this rhythm of the day and the night and the months and the years that our hormones thrive on. So get into that consistency with your sleep, and you're going to be working with your hormones rather than against your hormones. Room temperature is so important. The ideal is 65 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know what that is in Celsius. Sorry, 60 something. 16, 17 maybe. Anyway, room temperature is important. The cooler the room, within reason, the better your sleep is going to be. And light therapy. So my big recommendation, if you gain nothing else from this talk but this, is that you go outside in the morning. Go outside in the morning. Get some natural sunlight onto your face, into your eyes, so that your brain gets the message it's morning. This is going to help tremendously with sleep, because we have a bunch of other hormones that I haven't even mentioned that are important in sleep. And cortisol is definitely one of them. Cortisol is highest in the morning, it's lowest at night. That's how we're able to fall asleep. And then in the morning, cortisol surges and we want to wake up. So the light will help, because it lets your body know that the rhythm is there. And so does the consistency, right? So this relates to better sleep is going to definitely improve every function in your body. All of the hormones that we talked about are affected by sleep. So priority number one, people, unless you have this really going well. Next is physical activity. We as humans are designed to move. We have evolved as movers. We haven't evolved as sitters. And this is an interesting thing relating to stress. We have evolved being able to handle a lot of physical stress. We were farmers we've been farmers for thousands and thousands of years. Before that, we moved, right? We moved around, sort of the Paleolithic type time, before agriculture. We moved all day, we hunted, and we were not sitting around at desks, right? So our bodies have adapted exquisitely for movement, and we can take a lot of stress in the movement category. Now, stress, on the other hand, emotional stress, we have not adapted very well for having chronic stress. So that my point in going through all of this is to illustrate to you how important it is for us to move. We are designed to move. Now, all I'm asking is that you start moving. Again, consistency is so important. So picking an activity that you do every day. Frequency is also important. The best thing if you're not active right now, the best thing you can do is put on that sneaker, get up in the morning early, and go for a walk. Go for a walk. You will be helping with your circadian rhythm for your sleep, and you will be moving. And we'll talk about how good that is for other things as well, not just the physical activity, but many things. And so if you can get in a regular practice 5 days a week, 7 days a week, where you're getting up in the morning and you're walking, that would be a great place to start. But let's say you already walk and you want to be more active, or you're at the gym. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It just matters that you are, well, the gym right now is not available for most of us, but what matters is that you're consistent and you do it frequently. I would rather see you doing 15 minutes of exercise 7 days a week or 5 days a week, rather than an hour of exercise twice a week. Does it make sense? But you have to do what you love. I'm not going to try to force you or tell you that you should be biking when you hate biking, or swimming when you don't want to get into a pool. Do what you love. And even if it's, okay, I'm getting up in the morning, I'm going to take a 10-minute walk, I'm going to get that light into my eyes, I'm going to get my body moving, I'm going to start my day off great. And then later on in the afternoon, I'm going to dance to 2 songs. Great. Do what you love, do it frequently, do it consistently. Okay. And I'm sorry, I actually should go back, because how this relates to hormones is incredible. When our bodies know when we're exercising, exercise or physical activity aligns everything in your body. Every tissue in your body knows when you're exercising, even the bacteria in your gut. So, and there's a lot of research showing how physical activity can improve your mood. It can improve thyroid function. It can improve, raise your sex hormones. It lowers cortisol, at least as long as you're not overdoing. Like, your cortisol raises when you do hard physical activity, but then it gets more adaptive and it goes down. It's actually, in the long run, good for stress. So super important for your hormones. Next, we have stress management. Stress throws your hormones out of whack, without a doubt. So what can we do to manage stress? Well, You're probably thinking I'm going to talk all about meditation. Actually, I'm not. Meditation is great, but there are 3 things that have actually been proven, besides meditation, of course, to help with stress. And they're easy. They're super easy. So, well, the first one, maybe attitude, is a little bit not so easy, but I'm going to tell you about it because it's amazing. People who view their stress as positive and helpful do not suffer the bad consequences of chronic stress like people who think the stress is bad for them. So if you think the stress is good, it will be good. If you think it's bad, it's going to hurt you. That's the attitude that I'm talking about. I'm not talking about being a happy-go-lucky person 24 hours a day. I'm talking about reframing the conversation to say, I'm under a lot of stress, but it's good for me because when I'm under stress, I perform better, I do more. Just that reframing of that conversation can really help your body cope with the stress. Even if it's not necessarily true, you can still try to reframe that conversation to a certain extent. The other thing that's very interesting is it's been shown in research that people who are under chronic stress and they help other people live longer. People who are under chronic stress and they do not help other people, they have a higher rate of mortality. I think it was 43% in this particular study. So just by saying, you know what, reframing your attitude and helping I'm going to help people. I have a lot of going on, but I'm going to try to help people. That's actually protective. And then nature. A study has shown, very interesting study, they put people in nature, what they consider to be nature, for 20 or 30 minutes or 40 minutes, and they found that cortisol was at its lowest between 20 and 30 minutes. That's all you need, guys. Just 20 minutes in nature. So now I've talked about walking twice. I'm going to talk about it again. Getting up in the morning, walking out in nature. You're going to be resetting your circadian rhythm, helping with your sleep, getting physical activity, and reducing your cortisol. Awesome, right? Now, stress, as we know, I talked about cortisol. That's the big one. Because what happens is when you're not managing your stress well, your cortisol is going to be really high and it's going to cause all of those problems that I talked about. And then your insulin is going to rise because now your blood sugar has risen. It can definitely throw thyroid out of whack because our thyroid is very, very sensitive to stress. So and obviously, I talked about how high cortisol for a long time will inhibit your estrogen and other sex hormones. So it's a domino effect for sure. So very important to try out these things that are pretty easy to do. And the last thing is food, of course. I want you to eat foods that are both nutritious and delicious. You can't have one without the other and be successful long-term with dieting or anything else that you're trying to do. So how do you eat better? Well, eat whole foods. Whole foods are nutritionally superior to processed foods every time. They taste better, they're more nutritious. And start with what you love. Again, just like exercise, I want you to think about the foods that you love and start there. If you can find the whole food version of the foods that you love, you're going to be in a much better place than eating a diet that you think is healthy, but they require you to eat all these processed foods, or trying to eat a diet that you don't like and then not being able to continue it. And you have to pay attention. Pay attention to what you're eating, how you feel after you eat. So important. So these are really, it's not rocket science to figure out good food that's nutritious and delicious for you. It really is not that complicated if you do these 3 things, I promise you. Okay, so in summary, these are the 4 things: sleep, movement, stress, and food that you have to think about in order to balance out your hormones. And I'm sorry, for food, I didn't even mention the effect it has on hormones. Obviously, insulin is the big one. If you eat a lot of sugar and refined carbohydrates, it's going to raise your insulin. Thyroid is also sensitive to food a lot of times. So, and food basically affects every aspect of your health. So you need nutrients to build those, to convert that T4 to T3. You need nutrients to to have proper estrogen, to have the raw materials for estrogen. So sorry about that, went back a little bit. But anyway, to summarize, we need to pay attention to those 4 areas. Work in phases with slow change. Just pick one. Just pick one right now to work on, and work on it for the next 2 months, and then pick another. Thyroid, cortisol, insulin, estrogen. Those are the biggies, but there are many, many more that I could talk about. Testosterone, melatonin. I mean, there's so many different hormones that we have in our body. But overall, if you're focusing on these things, you're going to have that balance that you need. The hormones kind of figure themselves out, really. And don't ignore the symptoms. Get help sooner rather than later. If you do not have to suffer. Many women suffer through menopause, or they suffer through postpartum, or hypothyroidism, low estrogen, too much estrogen. We really don't need to suffer like this. There's a lot of things that you can do. So if you feel like you need help in this area, this is where I work, right? Obviously, I'm very passionate and interested in helping women to not suffer, to do the things that really work and that reduce the pain. And then eventually, sometimes you do need a doctor to work with, but there's a lot you can do with these 4 things that I can help you with. So if you really want to get more answers and balance out those hormones and feel better and feel great, not just better, but feel fantastic, then I invite you to get on a strategy call with me. I do strategy calls, to basically to hear about what your goals are, what your challenges are, and then to give you clarity and next steps. What should you do next? Sometimes that may be working with me, sometimes it won't. But I am available for these complimentary. I don't charge for these strategy calls. So definitely sign up for that if you're interested in getting more answers. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me. There's my website and my email. You could just email me, and I'd be happy to help out. Thank you so much for staying to the end of this presentation.